Hello everyone, I'm Mike Walter. Joining me now is Chris Rasmussen, lead of the GEOINT Pathfinder Initiative at NGA. Welcome to our studios, Chris. Great to have you here. What exactly is the idea behind GEOINT Pathfinder, and how is this unique to NGA and the intelligence community?
The GEOINT Pathfinder Initiative came out of a D&I study recommendation called Strategic Opportunities for GEOINT. And as we were sitting around coming up with ideas of there's serious commoditization and commercialization of GEOINT as a discipline from space and on the ground. So the small sat revolution and the social media and the open source on the ground with everyone taking pictures and your phone acting as a sensor, there's a serious redefinition of what GEOINT is and what is original content and value moving forward. Unlike some of the other INTs, if you look at it from an INT perspective, there's not any companies that can hack cell phones and sell reports like the NSA. So that's a kind of a government secured monopoly. That's not the case with GEOINT if you factor in those other commoditization and commercialization effects. So the idea of the Pathfinder was kind of riffing on a business strategy, and business analogies are imperfect within government, but it's kind of instructive, is whenever there's a new product or service within a company through a merger or acquisition, or their laboratory comes up with something completely different than the mainline business of the organization, a strategy is often to spin off an independent unit to let it grow organically rather than to have the headquarters kind of mapping its equities to it and not letting it breathe organically. So the Pathfinder idea was we have to disconnect a little bit from the classified mothership to draw out the real value of what unclassified sources can answer. So the fusion of the emerging small sat stuff with social media and open source on the ground to generate unclassified insights. So the Pathfinder will have no classified inputs or outputs into it. It'll operate through a series of in-house labs, but mostly off-site and through telework, and to try to answer 4 questions using only unclassified sources. And the reason that was done is we've had several initiatives that said up your open source intelligence game. They start out strong for about 2 weeks, and then we default to legacy behavior. So the reason that classified was denied was to do that and to create a sense of hustle around this is all you have to try to answer this question, to bring out the art of the possible and curiosity to those questions using only unclassified sources, because the pivot of the agency is going to be, kind of look at it as a triangle. Right now, the base of the agency's knowledge is classified, and we kind of sprinkle open source on top. That needs to be completely inverted. So the base is unclassified, and then you focus the classified on the remaining niche. So the organization, in many cases, needs to be inverted moving forward.
Very thoughtful. Can you share with me some of your specific goals and near-term milestones of the initiative?
Right now, the initial planning phase is very IT-centric. So we just got the keys to our Amazon Web Services, the cloud computing, about 2 days ago. We're inking deals to have a good social media and open source subscription toolkit. And then we're working on the HD movements within the resources department to start moving the personnel. So rather than relying on resumes and kind of what you did 5 years ago, we have a series of questions and kind of like quizzes for the people. There's analysts, developers, data scientists, and then support staff, full-time attorney and classification review people. But what we're going to make the decisions on is, for the analyst, we're going to say, okay, in 48 hours, make a product or service using only unclassified surfaces. What do you think is original GEOINT content in a highly flooded market? That's what we're going to make our decision upon. The developer question for the more development talent is, if you have all the compute resources you can drink, access to Digital Globe, Black Sky, Skybox, every social media feed that you can think of, a decent open source subscriptions, what would you make? What insights would you derive from that? And that's what we're going to make our decisions on. And we'll know whether, if people are following technology, what they read, what kind of open source material and research they're doing in their private life or at work. And that's where we're going to make our decisions to move the personnel. So we're talking about 20 to 30 analysts and developers. We want to keep an analyst-developer ratio about 4 to 1. So for every analyst, there'll be 1 embedded developer. And that's been a pretty good ratio with how you do kind of a creative DevOps type of creation of new content and things.
So you've talked about the hurdles and the numbers, but talk to me about day-to-day activities. What are they involved in? Also, do they work inside or outside the agency walls?
So we're just doing the initial planning phases now. And there's, like I said, there's IT-focused people that are brokering the deals for the Amazon Web Services and things like that, but the analysts haven't been moved into Pathfinder yet. So we are setting up a decent toolkit for them. So we're doing a lot of research and market research work and contracting work to bring in a pretty substantial toolkit. One of the systems is you draw a circle on the map and it brings in about every social media feed that you can imagine. Facebook, Instagram, Yik Yak, YouTube, Twitter, and that'll give you a good sense of what's happening on the ground. And then we have, of course, our relationship with Digital Globe, and then we're also having some emerging relationships with some of the non-traditional small sat vendors. So, I mean, that's just one example on the social media side, but fusing those together, what could we create as far as outputs? And the outputs within the Pathfinder, we're going to generate unclassified insights. So we don't necessarily have, NGA doesn't necessarily have a flagship unclassified product line. We have these one-offs and we do domestic support, but we don't have a flagship unclassified product line, if you will. We want to help develop that. And we're not going to be making electronic paper per se. We're going to be growing a living knowledge base. So each one of these questions has its own URL in a system that has version control, basically a wiki or how software is made with GitHub. Rather than emailing back and forth attachments and you get the coordination problem of doing a group writing assignment, the great thing about version control is everyone's always on this, has the latest version and same sheet of music, and you can go back in time and compare what everyone's written or done. So as we bring the folks on, if you have a screenshot or a visualization of a data set, type 2 sentences about it, put in the picture, or if you have a source that you want to cite, write 2 sentences, point the link to it, and just grow a living knowledge base. Electronic paper or finished product or the discrete journal article, that will always have value, but there are other ways to answer questions rather than sending out electronic paper or trying to copy what the New York Times is going to put on the front page, because the front page doesn't mean that much anymore in a world where when you don't have space limitations. And if you look at the journalism industry, they're doing a lot of experimentation to try to blend in more and distribute content through social media and get more interactive with their readers for that reason. And it's not an either-or proposition. The journal article and having your name published in a traditional book or magazine is still really exciting, but there's other ways to tell a story.
Yeah, and as you look at that landscape, what do you think is the #1 impact of, to NGA's customers as a result of the GEOINT Pathfinder initiative?
Well, the first thing will be the quantity of unclassified insights that will be generated. We have a lot of insights that are unclassified, but we're putting those on high-side networks. So having just people interacting with unclassified content would be huge. One of the things that we're emphasizing in Pathfinder is mobile delivery. We have to figure out how to deliver content mobily to people's personal devices. Now, delivering to government devices is cool, and that's a good short step, but we have to figure out how to distribute to people's personal devices and then distribute even the apps in many cases through commercial means. So NGA was the first agency to put apps into iTunes, into Google Play. So that's just the wrapper. So let's just say that we have a Pathfinder app. We want to put it into iTunes and Google Play to bring it down onto your own personal device, and then you get creative with the data and the authentication of storing for official use information or limited distribution information. But we want to emphasize mobile. We have to compete, if you will, on those screens. I mean, the most valuable real estate in the world, I love Huntington Beach, California, but that space on a tablet or your phone is one of the most competitive spaces in the world. From an advertising perspective, from a lot of the brands like Facebook and us as well, we have to compete in that space with the amount of GEOINT content that's coming from the private market. We have to blend in and add value on top of it and compete in the same space.
So the issue then becomes trust. Obviously, there's some mistrust when it comes to industry working with governments, such as sharing of data, utilizing open source applications, acquisition processes, and proprietary benefits. So how do you hope to overcome these?
Well, back to the iTunes and Google Play, where in my other hat, I oversee the public open source software development for the agency. We were the first agency to open source software on GitHub. GitHub is the largest open source development platform on the internet. And the thing is, if you want to be in the big data ecosystem or part of the knowledge economy, you just have to be in these networks. I mean, intelligence doesn't always equal secrecy. It makes sense from our history of where we were founded, but intelligence does not default to secrecy on the tin. So when we started open sourcing software on GitHub, we built a brand and a lot of goodwill by doing that. And then by putting these safety and navigation applications into iTunes and Google Play that helps people, you can download this app. It's called the Anti-Shipping Activities Messages. You can get this on your phone, and it shows you piracy acts and all the kind of hostile acts at sea that's offered free from us to anybody. And just doing those types of moves, and in particular with the work that's been done with the Ebola crisis and the earthquake in Nepal, is NGA is opening up a lot of data. So I think that we've made a lot of goodwill efforts to show transparency, and interacting with some of these companies. I think that's a positive goodwill effort to say, look, there are some secret things, but for a lot of these strategic questions, a lot of people are asking the same question. Hedge fund folks are asking the same type of questions as we are, and it's not this overly spooky thing. And if we come in with that message, with a big tent approach, like the Pathfinder, we're bringing in students from the University of Minnesota's Geospatial Polar Center. I mean, we don't have to clear everyone to work on unclassified problems, and that's unique. I mean, non-disclosure agreements hold up in every court, and if we work with people at origin over the internet in an unclassified manner with gaining trust on both sides, we don't necessarily need to do on-site cleared support in every case. So the trust factor is, it's both ways, but this is kind of neat. It sounds kind of pedestrian, but what I say to when some contractors, when they're bidding on some of these things that we're looking at, I'm like, don't take this the wrong way. I don't want you in the building, in the skiff, because we have to clear you to come in to do this work. If you can stand up a good platform or good APIs, and we can interact with your organization at origin over the internet in many cases and have a back and forth dialogue, there's no reason to clear you to come inside of a skiff, particularly when more of the GEOINT is becoming more unclassified. So how do you build that network and trust at that level? And that's what we're trying to build on. And I think those efforts with GitHub and iTunes and Ebola and Nepal are very good faith efforts trending in the right direction to show that NGA is trying to be as transparent as possible, and we have an interest in growing open data and working transparently on some issues.
So the shift in focus to the unclassified realm, what does it mean for NGA today and in the future?
Kind of a fun hypothetical that I've been using. I drew a little picture of it, of what this building would look like. But if you ask, if a geospatial organization were formed today with all of the commoditization and commercialization in the commercial market and in overhead, and all of the phones and devices on the ground taking pictures and people generating tons and tons of tweets and content, would it look like anything that we have today, born from closed systems looking into closed societies? I don't think so. I think it would be much more open. It would be, I don't know what the percentage would be. If you visualize it, a building, I don't think you would need an entire building of secret space. You can have maybe the first 6 floors would be uncleared, and then the top ones would be your skiffs. That's just kind of just my opinion of what it would potentially look like from a building perspective if it were done today, because a majority of the value that we need to derive insight from is coming from the unclassified side. And this is not to say that classified doesn't have a place. It does. It'll always have niche. We're just going to be asking it to focus more in the future rather than defaulting to it.
Chris, always great to see you. Thanks for stopping by our studio to visit with us.
Sure.
I've been speaking with Chris Rasmussen, lead of the GEOINT Pathfinder Initiative at NGA. Stay tuned for more Trajectory on Location.